Lois Lane returns home to her apartment to hear that someone is already inside. She grabs a baseball bat and goes to investigate the noise coming from her kitchen, only to find Clark cooking for her while waiting for her to get home. Aw, well that's sweet. I think.
What are you doing here?
3 months ago, we had our first date, and so to celebrate, I am making you your favorite. Breakfast for dinner.
That's your favorite.
You love breakfast.
Yeah, for breakfast. You love it.
Oh, maybe not. Lois does not seem super happy that Clark just let himself in. She also refutes the reason he gives for why it's supposed to be a sweet gesture, as breakfast for dinner is his favorite meal, not hers. Not to mention that there's no such thing as a 3-month anniversary. It's in the name. People who celebrate relationships based on months instead of years come off as desperate and creepy, but Lois does still seem happy to see Clark and greets him with a romantic kiss. Okay, shaky start to the romance scene, but they seem genuinely attracted to each other, and the actors do have a natural chemistry that shows on screen.
It was very funny today.
What?
It was hilarious, the little back and forth we had going. You giving me guff for my article. Jimmy was eating it up.
I wasn't acting, Clark. If you keep interviewing yourself, eventually people are gonna figure it out. And ethically, these interviews are hugely problematic. I mean, you literally know the questions in advance.
Wow, that's awkward. Clark thinks genuine and legitimate criticism of his unethical journalistic practices from his very recent girlfriend, who also happens to be a professional journalist, and his co-worker was just playful banter. Between that, his complete lack of remorse over his interference with Baravia, and his smug satisfaction at having his own fraudulent article reach the front page, breaking into the apartment of a girl he's only been dating for a few months to make her food she didn't ask for just because he likes it, this film is beginning to paint a picture of a dangerously arrogant and selfish man with unparalleled strength and no morals holding him back. How exactly is he the hero again? Okay, let's not panic. There's still time to turn this around. Clark attempts to take the criticism on the chin or potentially deflect it by saying he'll allow Lois to interview him instead, to which Lois says he will not like that, and boy is she not kidding. Clark says he's media savvy and that he can handle it, so she tells Clark she wants to do the interview right now. And now we get into the scene that had a completely different effect on 50% of all people who watched it. For half the audience, this is the scene that cemented David Corenswet as the definitive on-screen Superman and James Gunn as a master scriptwriter and comic book filmmaker. For the rest of us, it was an embarrassing tell-don't-show of the central theme of the film and of James Gunn's tendency to insert himself into every male character by making them lack any level of maturity, morality, or masculinity. The interview begins playfully, with Clark putting on his best masculine hero voice, but the interview pretty much immediately falls apart the minute Lois starts making factual statements.
Recently, you've come under a lot of fire for
I don't
what
know if
some
it's
might.
a lot of fire,
It's
but-
a lot.
Clark immediately becomes defensive and dismissive at the idea that the public is critical of his actions in Baravia, which we've seen from several people so far is true. People seem to think he acted rashly and perhaps he shouldn't have gotten involved at all. Lois says that the Secretary of Defense is looking into Superman's actions, to which Clark scoffs and reduces the situation to him simply stopping a war. When Lois asks him to explain how he accomplished this, he pretty quickly and unequivocally implicates himself over war crimes.
Okay. How?
Well, Baravia invaded Jarhanpur, and I showed up and told them that wasn't right. And smashed some tanks and things, and a couple of planes and some other stuff.
After admitting to destroying government property and threatening Baravian soldiers into standing down, Lois asks Clark what interaction he had with the president of Baravia, Vasil Gurkos, to which he refuses to answer and acts very cagey about discussing, almost like he knows the interaction went poorly and that he should very much be ashamed to admit what he did.
Did you interact at all with the president of Bravia, Vasil Gurkos?
A very small amount.
What's a very small amount?
That was between us.
Lois explains to Clark that despite her knowing what happened, since Clark already told her that as a professional journalist she would ask this question to anyone in his position.
This is all on the record.
Yeah, but that conversation was between the two of us.
Yeah, and I would ask that question whether or not I knew the answer to it.
Really?
Really.
Clark then confesses to kidnapping, torture, and political coercion.
After I stopped the war, I went to see Gurkos
Where?
in the capital of Luchevik at the Royal Palace.
And
And I took a private audience with Gurkos.
how?
I flew him out to the desert, and I placed him against a cactus.
Lois correctly identifies these actions as what they are, while Clark continues to make excuses for his actions instead of accepting the consequences like an adult.
A cactus. So, torture.
No, not torture. Its spikes were, like, not even that big.
Lois then asks Clark what he said to Gurkos, and Clark digs his own grave even deeper.
What did you say?
I told him that if he ever messes with Jarhanpur again, he'll have to personally answer to me.
What did you mean by that?
That if such events occurred, we would have a more serious discussion, that's all.
More serious than tearing up his back on a cactus.
Gurkos was gonna kill people. You seem to keep forgetting.
Lois does not let up. She pushes and grills Superman in the interview with factual information that, when stated objectively and without bias, makes him look terrible to anyone who might read this interview and doesn't possess a personal connection to Clark himself, and Clark does not take it well.
In effect, you illegally entered a country, inserting yourself in the middle of an incredibly
Hold on
heated
a
geopolitical situation.
Hold on a second.
Siding with a nation, Jarhanpur, which historically has not been a friend to
Jarhanpur
the US,
has
against
changed.
a nation that's technically our ally, and then threatened to murder their head of state.
First of all, whether or not Jarhanpur is an imperfect country does not give another nation the right to
Yes, but
invade
the
it.
Moravian government maintains they're freeing the Jarhanpurians from a tyrannical regime.
Yes, but you know that's very silly.
I do?
The Moravian government, of all people, is saying this? Come on.
This is on the record, Superman.
Now you're being dishonest, Lois.
How am I being dishonest?
Clark completely breaks at this point and fumbles at an attempt to turn off the digital recorder, calling Lois dishonest for not including her own personal bias in her interview questions. He drops his Superman voice and professional demeanor and begins appealing to information he and Lois have agreed upon in their private relationship. Lois attempts to get him back on track off the record by appealing to an objective journalistic assessment of the facts. Because while she agrees with Clark's view of Baravia's ill intentions privately as his girlfriend, the publicly confirmed facts of the situation between Baravia and Jarhanpur do not align with their perspective on the conflict, and she's trying to be an objective journalist, not a biased gossip reporter. Okay, before we continue, let's take a little break from the scene so we can assess what we've seen and been told so far. The facts as they stand are that Superman flew to Baravia, a US ally and sovereign state without authorization to travel there, and attacked the Baravian forces at the border of Jarhanpur to stop them from invading. He did this by smashing some of their equipment. He did not have permission from the United States government to take this action, which as a private American citizen with no military clearance, superpowers or not, is tantamount to sedition. He then followed this up by flying to the nation's capital and abducting their president from his home, flying him out into the desert against his will, physically torturing him with a cactus massage, and threatening him with further violence if he ever tried to invade Jarhanpur again. Clark just declared his allegiance to the nation of Jarhanpur, against his own country and its allies, and put his government in a position where they now have to make him answer for his crimes if they don't want to start World War III. Holy fuck, man, if you wanted to leave some gray area for our hero to be in the right, you made it really hard on yourself. Now, the public perception seems to align itself with these facts. As far as the American people and their government are concerned, the nation of Baravia is an ally of America and is above board in terms of its political and military actions. Clark and Lois both seem to share the personal opinion that Gurkos is not such a benevolent leader and that he only has ill intentions behind his campaign against Jarhanpur. Jarhanpur is publicly perceived as having been an enemy of the United States in the past, and Gurkos claims he is invading Jarhanpur to liberate it from a tyrannical dictator. Clark states that this is silly and obviously not true, but presents no evidence as to why that's the case. He seems very certain that Baravia is a bloodthirsty nation of conquerors who want nothing more than to slaughter innocent civilians, but so far we have no reason to take his word. He's very angry that Lois is taking the impartial position in this interview even though the facts line up with what she's saying. This is because Clark is personally invested in being correct about the decision he made. He's not thinking like a journalist or an outside observer, merely as someone who is trying to save lives and do the right thing. He didn't think about the consequences or larger political implications of his actions. He made a rash decision rooted in his very well-intentioned but clearly naive and shallow principles. It seems that from his perspective, saving lives is paramount, no matter the context, and he doesn't care about the larger bureaucratic red tape and political nuances that sometimes cause harm to innocent civilians. Admirable, but obviously very naive for a professional journalist in his 30s who ought to understand that the world is more complicated than that. He's starting to become angry and irrational at being questioned for his actions instead of being celebrated for them. This indicates that while he is starting to understand how poorly thought out those actions were, he doesn't regret them or think he did anything wrong. That stopping Baravia was an obvious good with no deeper moral or political implications, and that everyone else is being unfair or immoral for looking at the facts of these events rather than just the pure intent behind them. He also seems very perturbed at the journalistic approach Lois is taking. He seemed to expect a softball interview where Lois simply praised his actions without question instead of digging deeper into the facts and circumstances surrounding his intervention. Clark very begrudgingly continues the interview with what she said in mind. Lois asks Clark if he thinks the interview is going well, and he sasses back at her like a teenage girl.
You think this is going well?
Do I think this is going well? I think I'm doing a good job.
Ugh, were you born with your head up your own ass, Clark, or did you have to work hard to squeeze it up there? I've never seen someone be so arrogant and so entitled while being so clearly in the wrong. Lois sees his sass and raises him some public accountability, to which Clark responds exactly like a child would when held responsible for their actions.
Superman, did you consult with the president before entering Bravian airspace?
No.
The Secretary of Defense?
Nope.
Or any U.S. official before you took matters into your own hands and decided unilaterally how to handle this extremely delicate
Gurkos
situation?
and his goons were going to kill people.
Yes, but
Clark's only response to this indictment of his actions is to state the obvious, that the invading army was going to kill people, as though Lois and any other reporter who might ask him these questions were unaware that in an armed conflict, people die, which makes it okay for me to violate international law, I guess. The next exchange is hard to hear because rather than listening to Lois's rationalization for why what he did was reckless and ill-considered, Clark tries to cut her off by shouting over her. But I'll try to isolate both points. Lois says, "Yes, but the results of you seemingly acting as a representative of the United States will cause more problems around the world than a war that would have lasted between 12 and 24 hours that was just replacing one tyrannical regime with another." Clark cut her off halfway through to say, "I wasn't representing anybody except for me and myself and good, I don't know, doing good." I hope you don't feel I'm misleading you here by giving you those quotes dictated instead of using the audio, but that is what they both said verbatim. So, who sounds like a logical, rational person in control of their emotions who has all the facts straight and is looking at the totality of the situation for what it is? And who sounds like an emotional toddler, stumbling over their words, denying the reality of what they did, and trying to give themselves the moral high ground without actually making an argument? Representing doing good? What in the actual fuck does that mean, Clark? Good to who? Good to you? Good to America? Good to Lois? Good to the president? Good to the people of Yarhanpur? You can't just claim you're doing objective good without making an argument. Very few people are going to argue that it's not good to save people from getting killed, but because we didn't actually see the situation at the border, it sounds like nobody was in any immediate danger when he intervened. Of course, the further into Yarhanpur the Baravian army traveled, the more likely they are to meet military opposition or civilians who could become collateral damage. The idea that people were going to get hurt is of course inevitable in a military invasion. But what guarantee was there that it would be civilian casualties? Or that there would be any armed conflict at all? What if Yarhanpur decided not to resist and it was a calm and peaceful occupation with no fatalities? Would Clark still think it was justified to go and attack a US ally as they invade an enemy nation? His assertion that the Baravian military intended to harm innocents has no factual standing at this point. He's making assumptions without any evidence. After Lois finishes her statement, Clark asks her if she really believes that it's okay for one tyrannical nation to take over another, and she says that she would at least question it and consider the consequences before taking action, to which Clark famously spurgs out the obvious once again.
Consequences?
People were going to die!
This childish outburst from Clark causes Lois to back down and change the subject, seemingly because she sees how much she's upset her boyfriend and wants to calm the situation down a bit. But I'll be honest, I think this is a mistake. I think allowing Clark to shout her down like that by telling her something she already knows and that she clearly took into account when she told him he should have thought twice about acting the way he did is just enabling his naive worldview and immature behavior when faced with the challenging dilemmas like this one, to which he took a naive and immature approach to solving. Clark was wrong to act so rashly. He shouldn't have interfered with the invasion. He had no way to predict the outcome or the consequences. He assumed the worst and used it as an excuse to enforce his will on people he deemed worthy of punishment with no evidence to confirm his bias. Now, I know the context for the Baravian invasion is going to change later on in the film when we're given more information as to how it started, who was behind it, and to what the purpose of the invasion actually was, which was to bait Superman into doing exactly what he did. That does not excuse Superman for taking the bait. What he did was still reckless and irresponsible no matter the context behind it, and he should have thought twice before he acted, as evidenced by the fallout from his actions since then. The plan only works if Superman is as immature and irrational as the conspirators believed him to be. They used one of his seemingly well-known personal flaws against him in order to get him to commit treason and ruin his own reputation. His actions reaped the consequences that they always would have in any other version of the same circumstances. All this is without even addressing the childish nature of his response and all of the factors it does not address when determining when and how Superman should intervene with world events. People were going to die. As we've already stated, he can't know that for sure. But assuming he is correct, so what? Is it that simple to you, Clark? That's the only criterion needed for you to want to intervene in other people's lives in other countries all over the planet? Are you God? Are you going to prevent death no matter what, no matter where, all of the time for the rest of time? What about every other military conflict on Earth? Is this the only war that has broken out in his lifetime? I highly doubt it. How do you choose which wars to get involved in? Would you stop the US if they decided to invade Yarhanpur? What about Russia? North Korea? How do you make these decisions for us? And is it just relegated to war? What about natural disasters? Seems like a pretty easy thing for him to help prevent casualties from. He is Superman after all. But what about starvation? What about AIDS? What about cancer? Do you feel any obligation to stop people from dying from disease? Or is it only when you can punch someone to save a life that you get involved? Will that include violent crime in other countries where you are not a citizen? Are you the world police, Superman? Are you now obligated to stop all war, all crime, and all death all over the planet forever? I guess it's not that simple, is it? Stopping people from dying, period, is an impossible standard to maintain, so you can't really use it as a cop-out for when you violate the law. You don't stop every single person from dying, Superman, so don't use that as an excuse. You stop the deaths that you are able to, both physically and legally. That would be the reasonable position to take. Lois does not tell him this. Instead, she allows the petulant child to control the conversation and she moves on. Lois changes focus to the backlash Superman is receiving for his actions on social media, and Clark tries to dismiss the online criticism and in the effort proves to us even further that he doesn't know a single thing about how to conduct an interview.
You've gotten a lot of heat on social media lately.
I don't read that stuff. Superman doesn't have time for selfies.
Third person. You're referring to yourself in third person now?
No, it's just a thing I came up with that I thought I'd try to work into the next interview.
This is on the record, Superman.
Okay, well, not the part where I said that.
Yes, that part.
No, that part was an aside. That was off the record.
You have to say off the record beforehand, not afterward.
Why are you being like this?
It's fine. I won't write that you spend your spare time trying to think up sound bites, which are terrible, by the way.
Clark gets very frustrated with, I don't really know how to put this more succinctly than with the very concept of an interview. Lois has to once again instruct him that he is on the record and that if he wants something he says to be off the record, he must state that out loud so she knows the difference. Clark seemingly doesn't know a single thing about journalism, interviews, the difference between a fact and an opinion, an official statement versus an aside, or anything about international law or media or anything, really. It would be very uncharitable just to call him stupid, and I don't think he is, because he seems to possess at least an average level of intelligence. But with the evidence of Clark's lack of journalistic ethics, integrity, or journalism education, I think we can surmise a sound theory as to why Clark is so bad at this. This isn't confirmed or denied by the film, but I'm beginning to think Clark never actually went to school for or got a degree in journalism. He seems to know nothing about the research process, his grammar and form get critiqued by his fellow news writers, he has absolutely no knowledge of how to conduct an interview, and he couldn't even figure out how to operate a digital recorder. And most of his success at the Daily Planet thus far seems to come entirely from the fact that his alter ego makes him the only person capable of getting an exclusive interview with Superman. Lois even states how unethical and unfair it is that not only does Clark get to interview Superman whenever he wants, but that Superman knows all the questions in advance because he's the one asking them. In most comics and adaptations of Superman on film and television, Clark chooses to become a journalist because it allows him to go where dangerous or exciting events happen, ask as many questions as he wants, and be there on the scene so that he can respond quickly to threats and disasters as Superman. That seems to be the case in this version as well, but rather than actually going to school for journalism to know how to do it properly and get a job at a newspaper or TV station, This version of Clark might have actually used his fraudulent Superman interviews to weasel his way into the Daily Planet without actually knowing how to be a journalist. Again, there's no explicit proof of this in the film, but he's demonstrated repeatedly that he doesn't know how interviews actually work and that his only achievements at the planet are directly related to him being Superman. Not only is this selfish and fraudulent, but it completely undermines the profession that both he and his girlfriend share. The fact that Lois knows Clark is Superman and that he commits journalistic fraud every day and screws good reporters like herself out of stories that they could be reporting on instead of him implicates her as well for not saying anything about it to Perry. Not only that, but why in the hell would she be attracted to a liar and a fraud who uses his superhero status for personal gain while making a mockery of her chosen profession that he clearly doesn't respect because he's willing to cheat his way past her in her own career field? With the way Clark has behaved so far, she should be disgusted with him as a person and expose him for his crimes at the very least. But she's actually dating this selfish, arrogant monster. A monster who committed treason, fraud, broke into her house, doesn't know what food she likes, dismisses her criticisms of him as cute roleplay, makes a mockery of her profession, thinks that when she conducts a proper interview that she's attacking him and treating him unfairly, and spoiler alert, never changes or learns a lesson from any of these actions by the end of the film. She should break up with him here and now and turn him over to the government, but that would be a sane movie with rational characters. Lois tries to continue her questions about social media, which Clark continues to claim he barely pays attention to, and Lois tells him he's lying once again because apparently she's caught him getting big mad while reading mean tweets several times. Lois addresses the publicly known fact that Superman is an alien and attributes the general paranoia surrounding him and his actions to this fact. When Lois asks Clark about his alien parents, he says this.
What do you know about these biological parents of yours?
Just that they sent me here to serve humanity and to help the world to be a better place.
They said that.
They did. They sent a message along with me. That message is why I do what I do. I cherish it more than anything.
Wow. We finally get some honest-to-God sincerity from Clark. We see that he really believes his parents wanted him to do as much good as he can for the people of Earth. It informs his decision to ignore laws and protocols and just focus on saving lives and stopping injustice where he sees it, no matter the cost. It kind of redeems all of Clark's outbursts and naivety towards the real-world implications of his actions. We finally start to understand that he is a deeply compassionate person who genuinely cares about people and keeping them safe. It's a very good scene, and David executes the delivery perfectly. But this is getting dangerously close to an emotionally impactful and poignant scene, and this is a goofy, silly James Gunn superhero movie, so we're gonna need to undercut it with a joke ASAP.
Because you understand, now there are an awful lot of people out there maintaining you're here for more nefarious purposes. Hashtag super spy, hashtag super shit.
Super shit? Come on, Lois. You know that one specifically irritates
This is
me.
on the record, Clark!
Oh my fucking god, no way! Holy crap. Super shit literally makes Clark lose his super shit. Hashtag super shit. Oh man. Now, while that did make me laugh, I was not laughing with the movie, I was laughing at how fucking butthurt Clark got at what is probably one of the dumbest, simplest, and least creative insults I've ever heard. I was also partially laughing that with one line that James included because he had to vent his own personal frustration with the hate he gets on social media, he accidentally created a hashtag that he will now receive every time somebody mocks him online until the end of time. Hashtag super shit. All jokes aside, let me explain why this is fucking retarded. First of all, it's absolutely insane that Superman, of all people, would be bothered by childish insults on the internet. Second of all, if one of those two hashtags were to bother him, you'd think it would be super spy, as it implies the very thing that Clark is worried people think of him already. That he's an alien invader here to conquer us and undermine our society, that he's not really one of us and that he doesn't belong here. But no, it's the dumbest, most unclever insult possible that gets under his skin because Clark has the emotional maturity of an egg. Lois tries to calm him down by pointing out that she's just quoting what some internet trolls are saying, but Clark is far too triggered even hearing it secondhand and has to leave before he cries in front of his not-girlfriend. Clark begins to storm out of the apartment and Lois chastises him for it, as this is apparently a normal pattern of behavior for him, getting mad and running away when faced with conflict. Lois says that she knew this would never work in reference to their relationship, and Clark leaves, saddened and frustrated, believing the relationship to be over. Well, that was awful. I think any and all hopes I might have had that this version of Superman could live up to previous incarnations was well and truly shattered after that scene. It's nothing to do with the performance, mind you. David Cornswet is doing his best with the material, but the material just fundamentally doesn't understand the character. Clark in this film is rash, immature, selfish, narcissistic, thin-skinned, arrogant, sensitive, incompetent, and borderline psychotic to a criminal degree. He has not done a single heroic thing so far in the film, and this pattern will hold throughout. I was fairly impressed with Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane. Apart from a few moments where I wish she had pushed back harder on Clark, she behaves pretty much exactly how I imagined Lois Lane would. She's headstrong, confident, competent, and doesn't pull her punches for Clark just because he's her boyfriend. She conducts the interview like an actual reporter looking to get to the truth of the matter, not like a sycophantic media shill who writes puff-piece profiles for people she likes just to give them good press and make money doing it while shirking her responsibility to provide the public with pertinent information about world events. She behaves like an honest-to-God journalist. Who'd have thought we could still get one of those in this day and age, huh? Back in Antarctica, Lex and co. arrive at the approximate location of the Fortress of Solitude. And the first person off the plane is fucking Eve. The walking pile of nonchalantly collected highly incriminating evidence that Lex insists on bringing with him everywhere every time he does something highly illegal. Gee, I really hope this repeated pattern of incredibly reckless and stupid behavior doesn't come back to bite you in the bald, you ass! Angela points out the general direction of the fortress and asks how they're going to gain access. Lex makes a smug remark and the fortress begins ascending from the snow, meaning that Lex possesses whatever it is that triggers the entrance to reveal itself. I won't reveal what that is just yet, but it's important to note that presumably Lex had whatever this magic key to the fortress was before they even discovered its location, so just jot that down for later. As Lex and his crew enter the fortress, a cosmic whirlwind of convenience occurs so that an insignificant and retarded plot point can happen later on.
Superman, I preemptively put up this soothing... Oh my, I do apologize, but this is a restricted area.
Oh my god, baby Kal-El's compulsive need to hear his parents read him a bedtime story just fucked him in the ass because number 4 had the message already playing in anticipation of Superman's arrival to the fortress. This is how Lex conducts the next phase of his plan, because Clark's behavior is so predictable that the wrong person heard the wrong thing at the wrong time. It also hints further that only Kryptonian DNA will trigger the entrance to the fortress to appear, as so far only Krypto and Superman have gone in and out at will, and number 4 assumed that the fortress opening meant Superman was home. Anyway, Ultraman and the Engineer start tearing the robots apart and we get a really bad-looking CGI action sequence. Oh, and then this shit happens. What the fuck? Why did you grow a head where your butt should be? Was that supposed to look cool? It didn't, and you could have just turned around instead of doing a backwards handstand and accidentally shitting your head out of your own ass. I imagine it was probably supposed to invoke this scene from T2, but the difference is that not only does this look way cooler than this, but the T-1000 actually uses his morphing ability efficiently. It took exactly 1 second for the T-1000 to morph his back into his front, thus overcoming the disadvantage of having his face up against a wall, and instantly putting himself back into the fight. And he continues to use his morphing ability to overcome the brute strength of the T-800 by turning his face into liquid to trap the T-800's arm and then morph his face into his hands to get the leverage he needs to throw him into the giant gears. Now look how long it takes Angela to unsodomize herself. From jumping to a handstand, to birthing her own head out of her cooch, to reforming, to finally launching off an attack against the robots, it took her like 5 seconds, as opposed to just turning around and attacking them, which takes like 1 second. Dumb, not cool, not badass, and looks fucking retarded. And while Angela is doing all of these insane and unnecessarily complicated saw blade attacks, Lex, like the fucking genius he is, decides he doesn't need to take cover till the fighting is over and walks right into a hail of robot parts, saw blades, and sparks and fucking dies. But he gets better. Seriously though, this is fucking impossible. This looks like Nicholas Hoult was walking on an empty soundstage and was told to not blink or break gait and then they just CGI'd around him and you can tell. This is physically impossible. She could not possibly make a perfect cut through steel and wires and gears that caused the debris and sparks to go perfectly around his head without any notice prior to him doing this. He should be taking this robot debris straight to his shiny-ass dome and die from the impact. And she does it 3 times in a row! No! Then Krypto shows up to be fucking useless and gets smothered to death. But he gets better. Eve notices that a dog is getting hurt but somehow still doesn't realize that her boyfriend is evil. Superman 2 had this same problem. Why does Eve stick with Lex when he threatens her mother or attacks innocent animals? Anyway, it's time for Lex to tell us his motivation.
Hopefully there's something on here we can use to convince the General Superman requires immediate action. I can't stand the metahumans, but he's so much worse. Superman. He's not a man. He's an it. A thing with a cocky grin and a stupid outfit that's somehow become the focal point of the entire world's conversation. Nothing's felt right since he showed up.
I know, Lex. I've sacrificed my own humanity to help get rid of it.
Okay, so Lex does not like Superman. He hates all metahumans for some reason, but he hates Superman more for some other reason. He hasn't actually explained why he feels this way, just that his goal is to get rid of Superman. Does he mean imprison him? Does he mean kill him, or take his powers away, or send him to another planet or another dimension? He does have one of those, you know, but he doesn't clarify. Then, Angela has to chime in to tell us she also shares his motivation, because I guess we couldn't figure that out from the fact that she works for him and let him put his nanobots all up inside her. But back to the point, knowing Lex's ultimate goal is crucial to understanding any of the actions he takes against Superman throughout the film. If he wants to humiliate and break him and ruin his reputation in the eyes of the public, he already has an excellent means of doing that is much simpler than everything he's done so far. If he wants to kill Superman, and he's only doing all of these subterfuges to turn the public against him so that the government will approve his execution, then he's wasting his time. Lex has already broken the law several times in the film, and more of his crimes will be proven to the audience later on. Lex successfully breaks the law and gets away with it by hiding the evidence of his crimes. And the secret method of humiliation he already has for Superman is also a proven method of killing him and covering it up. So if he wants Superman dead, he has no reason not to have killed him already. I will explain these facts in detail later on. Now we get to talk about nanotechnology again and how it's basically magic. Lex asks Angela if she can get into Superman's computer, and apparently she can. This Earth-based nano-magic bullshit technology can hack into alien computers, decrypt alien computer code, restore alien data files, and translate an entire alien language all in about 2 minutes. I'm not even sure how to explain how impossible all of this is. The film just says, "Nanomachine, son!" and expects us to just go with it. The one point I will harp on is her ability to translate Kryptonian into English. There are dead languages on Earth that the best linguists in the world still haven't fully translated, and that is with a not insignificant amount of archaeological artifacts that have pieces of the language, or pictographs, or in some cases the Rosetta Stone that helps compare the unknown characters to other known languages. But a dead language from a near-extinct alien race thousands of years more advanced than we are and your only tool is a video message with a limited amount of characters to build off of? No way. And that computer certainly doesn't contain the entire Kryptonian alphabet, because if it does, that invalidates the opening scene where number 4 had to translate the message for Superman. That would mean there was no need, because the computer has the entire Kryptonian language encoded into it, which means the message could have been dubbed over in English for Clark, or he could have spent the last 3 years learning Kryptonian. Neither of which are in the film, so we must assume that the nanobot lady translated an entire alien language from one video message with only the message itself as a reference. Do I need to state again how amazingly overpowered Lex and his technology are? There seems to be basically nothing he can't accomplish, which begs the question as to why he even has a problem with Superman or metahumans. With his scientific prowess, he basically is a metahuman, at least according to James Gunn. And if he's so goddamn amazing, why hasn't he dealt with Superman already? In the meantime, Lex has his boy setting up a distraction for Superman so they can finish their business at the fortress. They release a tiny fire-breathing salamander monster out into the city at night, and by morning it has grown to the size of several skyscrapers. Well, fuck me, add that to the list of insane science bullshit Lex is capable of. But wait, Lex said this was a distraction to occupy Superman and keep him away from the fortress while they break in, and he had his guys let the monster loose at nighttime. But we see it here in the daytime, about to capture Superman's attention for the first time, and it appears to be about midday here in America. So it's been like, what, a little over 12 hours? Sounds like plenty of time to get in and out of the fortress undetected, and we can confirm that it was because Superman never showed up at the fortress to stop them. So why was releasing a fire-breathing, exponentially growing monster out into civilization necessary? It wasn't. So let's continue with this pointless scene and see how much unnecessary damage this does to the plot and the characters. This enormous axolotl on super steroids is about to crush an adorable little dog, and Superman speeds in real quick to save it. Aww, fucking cute and stupid. But wait, how did this big fucker get in the middle of the city without destroying anything around it? Did it get here to Metropolis Park when it was small and then wait till morning when it was huge? Did it have to eat to get big, or did it just start growing automatically? Did James make a tiny, ridiculous-looking creature for a joke and then have it get big so it can pose a serious threat so that we can have an action scene? I know I'm taking the piss out of this monster and how it works, but honestly, this is yet another scenario that could be its own whole movie. A monster that grows over time that Superman needs to stop before it gets big enough to destroy the whole city? That could easily fill an episode of a Superman cartoon or an issue of a comic book, and in fact it has. This is basically just Titano the Super Ape. And James uses it as a throwaway joke. I wonder how fucking expensive this joke was, James. Superman manages to hold up a several million-ton foot despite him being the scale equivalent to a pin underneath it. He should immediately shoot through the ground or the monster's foot, whichever is softer, and the cute little doggy should already be goo on the ground. Superman uses his super breath to push the dumbest fucking dog who ever lived out of the way, because it definitely would have run away from the danger if it had even a tiny bit of brains or instinct. Well, he's not alone. The people still crowding around this horrifying monstrosity must have fewer brains than the dog. Very few people are evacuating the area. And on top of that, you'd think they'd have evacuated already, being that this monster must have been here for a few minutes at least. Superman burrows his way out from under the monster's foot and bursts into the air to the triumphant sound of somebody else's Superman theme that this composer stole, eviscerated, and stitched back together with an electronic keyboard from 1978. Get your own goddamn theme! Superman punches the monster directly into a skyscraper just behind it and then has to fly around to make sure that the monster doesn't collapse the building that he punched it into. What a hero, saving people from his own stupidity. We cut to another fucking idiot who refused to evacuate the area eating his goddamn yogurt while a convenient news report in the background gives us some info about the creature.
The giant animal was first spotted early this morning in a Jitter's coffee shop about 7 feet tall, but it has apparently been growing.
Wait, so it was 7 feet tall this morning and has been growing ever since. So I'm right about this being midday, which means at least 5 hours have passed since then, and that was probably about 12 hours from when they released it. It's really taken Superman this long to notice a huge Godzilla attacking the city? Are there no other superheroes in Metropolis who actually give a shit? A whole day has passed and people are only just now responding to what should be an existential crisis to the entire city, but everyone's acting like this is just a normal Tuesday in Metropolis. Oh shit, is that the point? Is that the only reason James put the line about 300 years worth of metahumans in the movie? So that he could have an excuse to have as much crazy, dumb comic book shit in the film as possible without having people respond appropriately to huge crises like these? Great world building, dickhead. The monster unleashes its fire breath directly at Superman, who is still in front of the office building he had to save from his own punch, and holy fucking hellfire, the office gets fucking smoked! Superman just stayed right there and didn't use his super breath that we just established he has to counteract the flame jet and protect the building from the blast. He just tanked the hit and allowed the fire to shoot past him and destroy the office full of innocent people so they'd burn to death. Oh, just kidding, they're all fine. They magically dodged the fire that filled the entire room, I guess. I get it. This is a cartoon movie for toddlers. There are no stakes and no consequences to anything. Great. Superman half-heartedly asks if everyone is okay, and they somehow are, even though he did absolutely nothing to keep them safe, like blow back the fire, or fly up or to the side, or anything that would have stopped the collateral damage. Then he flies up and around and dodges fire for a bit for no reason, because fire doesn't hurt him, as we've just established. And then he comes back down right on the fucker's head, once again knocking it into the path of civilians, so he has to swoop down and save a woman from the monster about to step on her. He literally makes the exact same mistake twice within as many minutes. Apart from saving a fucking dog, all the people he's been saving have been from dangers he caused by fighting like a moron. He takes the woman he just saved not to the other side of the city where it's safe since he can fly fast enough to get back before the monster does more damage, but on a rooftop that's in the same fucking circle of buildings surrounding the monster. What the fuck? You haven't helped this woman. She's just as likely to die on this building as she was on the street. Then the actual stars of the movie show up. The James Gunn Ensemble. Oh, I mean the Justice Gang. Green Lantern, Hawkgirl, and Mr. Terrific, the resident superhero team here in Metropolis. Oh, where the fuck have they been for the last 17 hours? In fact, where the hell were they in the opening scene of the movie when a suspected superhuman terrorist was attacking the city and Superman got his ass kicked and the bad guy got away? Getting coffee? Making sure their stupid-ass outfits matched? Well, they're here now and they're going to help Superman since he's basically useless on his own. A convenient news report behind Cat Grant tells us that they are funded by the Lord Tech Corporation, which presumably is that logo seen on their uniforms. And on the building Superman nearly destroyed. Wait, hold on, are they just here to protect their boss's property? Oh my god, I hope not. They immediately rush the monster with absolutely no plan to stop him, but Superman, not wanting to be outdone in the retard Olympics, decides to smash a fucking water tower on his head and rain down hundreds of gallons of water and debris on the innocent civilians below.
The fuck are you doing?
Do you want to kill everybody, you fucking lunatic? And what did you actually think that was gonna do, Superman? Your own punches barely stunned the thing, and you're stronger than wood and steel. How would a water tower have any more effect than just hitting the damn thing with your fist, which you already know doesn't work? Hawkgirl quickly proves herself to be useless, and then rees off into the sky. Mr. Terrific uses his drones to scan the creature, and then quickly realizes he could be doing this from an office and doesn't need to get almost eaten by a giant monster. Green Lantern saves Mr. T by muzzling the creature, but for some fucking reason, he decided to attach himself to the construct he made with a set of reins and gets thrown around by the much larger, heavier creature that actually has its feet on the ground. Go fucking figure. He then gets his spine crushed against a radio tower, but he gets better. Mr. Terrific flies down to ask Superman what's going on, even though he just scanned the creature to find out what it is, and it's pretty obvious what's going on. There's a giant fucking monster attacking the city, genius! Superman simps for the monster by saying he wants to get it out alive, and like a reasonable person, Mr. T rolls his eyes and tells the rest of the team to go for its eyes. Hawkgirl and Green Lantern fuck around for a bit instead of Guy just throwing the monster into space, which he can and should do, and Superman finally saves someone from a threat that wasn't entirely his fault. Good for him. Except what the fuck was she still doing there instead of evacuating? Oh, this fucking movie! Superman criticizes everyone else's methods for being ineffective while contributing no better ideas, and then goes out of his way to save a fucking squirrel. Not any of the people in the cars behind it who might have gotten smashed by the monster's tail, but a fucking rodent. This is what this Superman cares about. Not people, but cute, cuddly animals. We call this performative niceness. The kind of thing sociopaths on Reddit or James Gunn do to seem like nice people when in reality they're the most vile, degenerate filth on the face of the earth. The kind of people like PETA who think being kind to animals over people makes you a good person. The kind of person who would save a dog from getting hit by a car but would wish misery and death upon people who disagree with their political opinions. The type of people who say that dog abusers should get the death penalty but then try to justify pedophilia. It becomes clear through Clark's actions in the film that he was written by an immoral person who mistakes being kind or being nice for being good. It's nice to make someone food as a surprise, but when you get their favorite dish wrong or break into their house to do it, it's clearly just for you to feel like you did a nice thing. When you get involved in conflicts to try to save people, but you end up making it worse and are really only saving people from damage you caused, it's no longer a good or moral act because it's no longer about saving people. It's about you feeling good about yourself and looking good to other people. Refusing to curse while you commit war crimes and put the world at risk of destabilization doesn't make you kind or wholesome. Saving dogs and squirrels does not make you a hero. Making good choices and leading by example does. Sympathy for a giant monster that's attacking people and putting them in mortal danger is not a moral good. Stopping the threat before any more innocent people are harmed is, which is why Mr. Terrific gets the kill instead of the titular protagonist. But hey, he helped with the landing, so that's a start. Jesus Christ, how are there still so many people around while this is happening? These morons deserve to get crushed. Clark continues to look like a complete joke by dragging himself out from one of the monster's fat flaps, and then gets made fun of to his face for being a wuss.
I was hoping we could capture it and take it to an intergalactic zoo, or at least euthanize it less painfully.
Come on, bro, don't be such a wuss.
Sorry to say it, but the bowl-cut bully is right. Superman is a complete pussy and a moron. How does he even know there is such a thing as an intergalactic zoo? How would he get it there? Did he just make this shit up to sound like a nice guy? Lantern continues to make some unfunny jokes, and then the entire city goes silent all at once to look at a news report as though the giant monster in Central Park would be the focus of the entire day. Lex is on a daytime talk show to debut a piece of footage that he swears before showing it is totally legit and definitely not fake. Trust me, bro.
Well, they couldn't be mistaken?
Oh, no.
Well, that sounds very disturbing, Lex.
28 of the world's top linguists have confirmed the translation, and 30 of the top forensic computer techs have confirmed to the validity of the footage itself.
Any chance they're mistaken?
Unfortunately, no.
You have the footage?
Yes.
Let's take a look.
The people there are simple and profoundly confused. Weak of mind and spirit and body. Lord over the planet as the last son of Krypton.
Dispatch of anyone unable or unwilling to serve you, Khaled. Take as many wives as you can, so your genes and Krypton's might and legacy will live on in this new frontier.
Do us proud, our beloved son. Rule without mercy.
And just like that, a nuclear bomb was dropped on the DCU, and its potential future became not unlike the ungodly fate of Japan after it was blown up. A sad, bleak future of anime porn and suicide forests. The second half of the message has been revealed to the public, and it turns out Jor-El and Lara wanted their son to stage a Genghis Khan-style takeover of Earth. Let's start with the presentation of the message first. We will reveal in mere minutes that this TV host is biased towards or has been paid off by Lex, so I won't question his thought process. Instead, I will pose this question to every other living human being in this film who saw this message. Why would anyone believe this? There are a million questions one would have about such a damning piece of evidence before immediately turning on a man who for the last 3 years has saved countless lives. Where did this message come from? How did Lex obtain it? How do they know it's real and not AI? Who are these two people in the video? How do we know for sure they are Superman's parents? How did the message in a dead alien language get translated overnight? How did any human linguists confirm the validity of the translation in a language nobody on Earth can speak or has ever heard before? Despite the fact that the message is real and the film will bend over backwards to tell us that it is, there is absolutely no way for anyone on Earth to confirm that, and no reason anyone should believe it. They just take Lex and these supposed experts in dead alien languages at their word. The larger problem with this scene, and people on both sides of the discussion on this film seem to agree with this, was the decision to make Superman's parents evil in the first place. This was a pretty much universally despised choice, and even the people who like the film were still in disbelief of the validity of the message, despite the film confirming several times that it is legitimate, and James Gunn himself in an interview confirming it one last time.
The biggest question that people have asked, probably you already, is about Jor-El and Lara's message. Is it real? Has it been doctored? Is that the actual
How
message?
can someone not think it's real?
I'm just saying.
How can someone? I don't understand. Like, we did this. So in the test screens, people were like, is it real? You know, with AI, nobody trusts anything. Okay. In the movie.
You make a point of saying,
he said,
Mr. Terrific says it's real.
Mr. Terrific says, I know those computer forensics guys, there's no way. That's Mr. Terrific, smart as Lex Luthor. Then I have Maury, the Secretary of Defense, say, I think whatever you think about Luthor, but it's real. And then the clincher is that Gurkos and Lex are walking together.
Right.
And, you know, Gurkos says, you doctored a message. This is great. And Lex says, it's not a message. You know, it's not doctored. Right. It's real. And who thought his own parents would be the ones to bring him down?
Okay. We just clarified.
Gee, James, why do you think people can't believe it? Maybe because it's a monumentally stupid decision to have the compassionate, loving parents of Superman who risked everything to send him to Earth before the destruction of their own planet also be raping, pillaging conquerors who want him to spread his seed all over the galaxy. Especially because the first half of the message is so contradictory to the second half of the message. First they talk about how much they want him to protect and cherish the new home he's been given, and then they say, fuck all them bitches and kill all your haters. It doesn't make any fucking sense. And the way you utilize this plot point throughout the film not only doesn't have much of an impact on the plot anyway, but it also doesn't make any sense. But we'll explore that when we get there. Superman goes inside the Stag Industries building to pout, and he is then confronted by the Justice Gang. Guy makes the point that if the message is true, he is obligated as a Lantern to stop him. Wait, so if the Kryptonians are a race of raping, pillaging conquerors, shouldn't the Lantern Corps have already known about them and confronted Clark when he first debuted himself as a superhero? And furthermore, why isn't the same level of scrutiny placed on all alien beings and organizations by the US government? The Green Lantern Corps is an intergalactic police force full of aliens. Was Guy's loyalty to Earth or the Lantern Corps' alleged benevolence never questioned? What about Hawkgirl? The Thanagarians are hardly a peaceful and polite society. Why wasn't she blasted by the media for being an alien? Is she even an alien in this universe? Wouldn't know, because she gets literally zero character development. She does, however, pose the important question about where they got the message, and Clark's brain turns back on, and he rushes to the fortress, and stop! These fucking close-ups are gonna make me puke. He looks like a fucking blobfish. Take this man's camera away immediately. The government decides to give Lex the go-ahead to detain Superman based on this new information, and Gurkos walks through a portal to Lex's dimension to confirm they are in fact in cahoots, as though we didn't already know. Gurkos praises Lex for his fake message, and Lex confirms for us and him, once again, that the message is indeed legitimate, leaving us with the question that besides staging a terrorist attack on American soil, how exactly are Lex and Gurkos wrong for wanting to stop Superman? I'm serious. Let's back up and take stock of the situation here. The public knows Superman is an alien, and prior to the attack on Baravia, he seemed to be a good Samaritan, just helping out. Lex is a philanthropic genius billionaire whose technological breakthroughs have helped advance mankind. Gurkos is the president of a nation not only allied with the United States, but seemingly in good standing with the UN, as there's no mention of any untoward behavior from them. Yarhanpur, on the other hand, has been described as a tyrannical regime that has not been friendly with the US in the past, but Gurkos and the media all claim he is invading Yarhanpur to free the country from said tyrannical dictator. We get no indication that this is not true. So one day, at Lex's suggestion mind you, Baravia decides to invade Yarhanpur to overthrow their dictator, and it would seem that the US and the UN both back this decision, as there is no mention of sanctions or condemnation of Baravia for doing so. Superman decides out of nowhere, with no evidence, that Baravia is evil and just wants to kill innocents, so he breaks international law, millions of dollars worth of military equipment, kidnaps and tortures their leader, and threatens to kill him if he tries to enact his will as president of his country ever again. Lex sells weapons to Baravia with authorization from the United States, and when his friend and ally Gurkos is attacked, he sends a fake Baravian superhero to defeat and humiliate Superman to teach him a lesson. Later, Lex gathers evidence that exposes Superman as the child of an advanced and bloodthirsty alien species who sent him here specifically to conquer and destroy and enforce his will upon the Earth. Something Superman has already shown the public he is willing to do. This convinces the government that Superman poses a threat, and they agree to let Lex capture and question Superman before deciding what to do with him next. Now, I don't want you to think I'm straw-manning the film. We know that Lex hated Superman before the Baravian invasion, and that he somehow knew Superman would intervene, and that he views this as an opportunity to get rid of him. But does the message from Superman's parents not confirm that Lex's hatred was completely justified? He didn't know Superman had been sent to invade and take over, but it ended up being true. And at this point in the film, everything he's done has been in service of stopping an alien invader. Now think about it from Gurkos' perspective. His longtime friend and business partner, Lex, encourages him to invade a tyrannical country, free its people, and create two new nations that will hopefully be more prosperous and free than Yarhanpur was before. None of the other governments of the world seem to think this is a bad thing, but an American superhero with no government authority decides to attack your military and threaten your life. And later you find out he is actually an invader from a race of tyrannical aliens. How were Gurkos and Lex wrong to want to get rid of him? We will see them do some evil things later on to ensure you don't take their side, but from Superman's actions and the message from his parents, how are they not justified? James Gunn wrote his villains as having the moral high ground and didn't even realize it. And by the end, Lex and Superman will have been the only two of the three to have committed any crimes. Crazy as it may sound, Gurkos has done nothing wrong, which is why it's kind of dumb that he conspires with Lex in the first place. He has every right to do what he does in the film. It's only his association with Lex and his knowledge of Lex's crimes that incriminate him. Lex also confirms that another potential motivation for this plot is that Gurkos will allow him to rule half of Yarhanpur once the invasion is over. Okay. Seems like kind of a weird thing for Lex to care about when he already has more resources at his disposal than most Middle Eastern countries combined, but maybe we'll get clarification on that later.